Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And today I am going to do an Ask Peter video. I am going to answer a question/comment that I got in my video. I actually thought that it was a comment question that might apply to a lot of people. I actually feel like it's something that I've addressed quite a bit over on this channel, but like, you know, I don't know, maybe this is somebody that's new to my channel that hasn't watched my channel for a while. I have no idea. But I feel like I've talked about this quite a bit, but I think it's a really pertinent topic and a good question to ask. And so, and they kind of asked like 2 or 3 questions within this. And so I think I've addressed like some of these things a few times, you know, sprinkled throughout other videos or, you know, put here in this video or put there in that video. But I've never done like a dedicated video talking just about this. So I want to share this comment. And the comment says, my cousin is an alcoholic and she will never get sober. She and her addiction stole my dreams and hopes. She abused me and she still does. I love her. I also have deep resentment. I wish there would be a talk about what families go through. She has drank from age 12 to 62. I support her rehabs. I am kind of mad as hell. I want to know if addicts have a bit of selfishness or narcissistic traits. I'm laughing because, I mean, obviously so, you know, when we don't even realize it sometimes. I finally got help myself with family and friends of alcoholics. Her brother drank himself to death. Many of my family has died from addiction. I never did drugs or anything. Too busy being the caretaker and lying for them. Any advice, please? Love you. Okay, so, well, first of all, I just want to say, I think it's great that you got involved in a program that helps family members and friends of alcoholics, because that was the first thing. Let me put this down a little bit. Hold on a second. That was the first thing that I was going to recommend is if you're not already involved in AlAnon, which AlAnon is a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics. If you're not already involved in AlAnon, I would greatly get involved in AlAnon, go on a regular basis to 1 or 2 meetings a week, get a sponsor, and work steps in AlAnon. And there's like this real big misconception about AlAnon. I think a lot of people think that like AlAnon is a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics, that you're going to go there and they're going to teach you like how to cure the alcoholic, or they're going to tell you what to do with the alcoholic in your life. That's not what it is. AlAnon, from my understanding, and I have gone to quite a few AlAnon meetings, and I've spoken at AlAnon meetings. I've shared my story in AlAnon meetings. I have a lot of friends of mine that are involved in AlAnon. From my understanding, AlAnon is where you go, and like when people talk about, somebody just recently said it on a video, they said my qualifier is like, your qualifier would be your cousin. And that would be the person in your life that's an alcoholic. Okay, so you go and you talk about how you've been affected, right? So you would say, I'm powerless over an alcoholic and my life has become unmanageable. And then you would go through and you would work the steps on how your life had been affected in relation to the alcoholic in your life. And you would do an inventory and you would look at character defects and you would make amends and things like that. It's just exactly the same as what an alcoholic or an addict does in a 12-step program. You would do the same thing in AlAnon. You would work on yourself. So it's a 12-step program to help you work on yourself, okay, to get healthier. It's not a program to teach you how to fix the alcoholic. So I just want to make that very, very clear. But I am glad that you stated in there that you've like reached out for help and you've started going to maybe some meetings and things like that. And I would encourage that for anybody. I mean, anybody that comes to me and says, I have a family member, I have a spouse, I have this, I have that in my life, a friend, whatever. And it's like brought me a lot of like trauma and chaos and I don't know how to deal with it, but I still love them. And I think that also is like kind of the epitome of abusive and codependent relationships, is when we say, this person has done this to me, this person has done that to me, this person has done this to me, this person has done that to me, but I still love them, right? You know, I can remember a therapist saying to me years ago, it's like, Peter, you're standing there and this person is like hitting you over the head with like a 2x4. And it's like, you're saying, I love you, I love you. You're not even saying, don't stop. You know, you're just saying, I love you. No matter what you do to me, I love you. And I think the deeper question to that of why, what I was going to say was, I always recommend to people therapy for yourself as well as attending a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics and addicts, is because there's something inside of us. And I did it for a very long time with my mom. You know, I never said anything to my mom until it came down to my sobriety and her coming in the way of my sobriety. I really never said anything to my mom, you know? And so I just kind of took it. I took it for the years, you know, through the years. You know, I mean, she knew I didn't like the drinking and stuff like that, but like, I would never say to her, like, if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to leave you forever. You know, I was very similar to you. I could tell you all the things that my mom did and all of that with the drinking related to specifically to the drinking, but I would say, but I love her. And it was kind of like my friend Tanya always says, you know, that like we put all this out there and then we pull it back. We pull it back with that, I love you, right? And I think it's an interesting comment. I've asked myself many times in my life, you know, and people will say, well, it's your mom. Of course you love her. Well, I think there are a lot of people out there that have toxic, chaotic relationships with family members that they don't love them or they are not in their lives today, right? So I don't know what that's about, right? Like why we excuse the fact that they've done all this for us. I don't know if it's maybe we have martyr syndrome, you know, where it's like I've done all this and I'm the good person and I've worked so hard and I've supported them and blah, 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 and they should love me. Well, if love were enough, we wouldn't need 12-step programs. We wouldn't need treatment programs and things like that, you know? So I think, you know, going to therapy and taking care of yourself and learning why you respond to this person that way, like that's helped me a lot, you know, and looking at, well, why didn't I set healthy limits and boundaries for my mom or other alcoholics in my life? Why didn't I set boundaries and limits for people that were treating me horribly in my life? Why wasn't I willing to stand up for myself? That was like important for me, you know? The other thing that's important is a 12-step program, if that's what you choose to do, you know, but I think to work through those steps, like I always recommend those two things to people. The one thing that you said at the beginning, when you said, my cousin is an alcoholic, she will never get sober, I want to say this. I, for a very, very long time, would make that exact same comment about my mom, okay, when I was in high school and early college and things like that, even though I was drinking as well, I would say, my mom is an alcoholic and she'll never get sober. And I know that that's how you feel. One of the reasons why I share my story, one of the reasons why I share that my mom got sober at 51 or that I have friends of mine that are in their 60s and 70s getting sober today is that I don't ever want anybody to lose any hope. I don't ever want anybody to think that their family member or their friend might not get sober, because they might, okay? They could still, at 75 or 80, they could still get sober. I know people all the time that are coming into the program that are that age. And, you know, I think that we always have to hold out hope. That doesn't mean that you condone what they've done. That doesn't mean that you condone the way that they treat you. That doesn't even mean that you have to continue. You can show support in a million different ways, you know? You can say, I love you, I'll be praying for you, good luck at treatment, but no, I'm not going to come visit you. That's taking care of yourself, you know? And she goes on here to say, talking about how she's abused her and that she has deep resentment, which all of that is totally, I think, understandable, and that you're kind of mad as hell. I think all of that is totally understandable. And then you asked this part about selfishness and narcissistic traits. So I'm not going to get into the diagnosis of narcissism because, like, this is just me sharing my personal experience. But in 12-step programs, we're told that the root of our disease is selfishness and self-centeredness. And I'm just talking about from a 12-step point of view because that's my experience. But there's not a person in a 12-step program that is not aware of how selfish we are and how self-serving we are and how we are only out for ourselves and only looking out for ourselves. I mean, it's literally, that quote is in the basic text, that the root of our disease is based in selfishness and self-centeredness. That's what we have to work on, is to remove that and become selfless and start taking care of somebody. So when somebody is in active addiction, yes, it totally makes sense to me that they would be acting out of selfishness and self-centeredness. That completely 100%. Like, I don't even know that I realized. I just stopped the camera because my neighbor came out here and he was like looking at me to ask me a question. So anyway, yes, but like I was saying, like the root of our disease is in selfishness and self-centeredness, which is why we work on learning to be more selfless. That's why, like, acts of service are really important to us. That's why giving back what was so freely given to us is so important, and those kinds of things. But I think for you to feel that you've been abused, that you've been mistreated, to be angry over it, to have resentments towards that, I would recommend, based on my personal experience and friends of mine and family members of mine, to get heavily involved in a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics and addicts. I would recommend as well trying to find, you know, a counselor or talk therapist to go to and talk about this, because this has obviously affected you greatly and your relationship. And I think it's also important to learn how to set healthy limits and boundaries for those people, and to say, you can love somebody but not have to continue to take what they're handing to you, you know? You can love somebody and be supportive of them, but you don't have to sit there and go visit them at every treatment they've gone to. You don't have to continue to say, I love you so much, whatever, you know? You have a right to say, I'm angry as hell, I'm resentful, you've mistreated me for years, and now I have to distance myself from you. I love you, you're my cousin, and I will always love you, but I can't tolerate the way that I've continued to be treated. You know, you have a right to do that. And I'm going to say something that's going to probably be difficult to hear. I have had very similar situations in my life. I've had very similar relationships where I was being horribly mistreated. And yeah, in my head, I would say, but I love this person. And, you know, people would say to me, like, you need to distance yourself from them. No, I can't. Like, I love them, blah, 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 whatever. If you knew what I do for them, and they'd say, that's great that you do things for them. You need to distance yourself from them. This is not a healthy relationship. And you're like, but I love them. I love them so much. You're so good to me, blah, 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 whatever, right? What I had to take a look at in therapy was, what was I getting out of that? What was I getting out of that abusive relationship? Was it that I could tell everybody how great I was? Was it that I could tell everybody how much, you know, service I was to those people, or how supportive I had been to those people? Was it that I didn't know who I was if I didn't have that relationship with that person, if I couldn't say I love that person? Like, what was I getting out of it? Because to stay in a sick, abusive relationship like that has to say that I'm getting something out of it, okay? That maybe I'm addicted to chaos. Maybe I'm addicted to codependency. Maybe there's something in that like, and that's why it is important to go to those programs or to go to therapy, because there's something in that like I desire, or that I crave, or that I'm getting out of that I cannot set that limit and that boundary for myself. And I think that's really, even though that's so hard to hear, and like the times that people would say that to me, it would honestly, just 25 cents in the cuss jar, it would piss me off, right? I'd be like, you don't know. You know what you're talking about. Well, I do know in retrospect. And I've had to take a really deep look at that. Why I was so willing, that my low self-esteem and my low self-worth and my thinking that I didn't matter, you know, that I defined that all through my relationships for people. I was real quick to tell you all the things I did for those people, you know, which is why altruism to me is so important today, that we do kind acts for people and we don't tell anybody, right? Because then you start asking, because if you feel the desire to go tell somebody, oh, well, I've been so supportive, I've done all this kind of stuff for somebody, which I'm not saying that about you because you were just explaining the situation, but when I find myself wanting to go and do that, then I have to ask myself, well, then why are you doing these kind acts? To be a good, kind person, or because you want pats on the back or attention from it? Is that really the ultimate goal? And so what I had to really realize was that my interactions, my lack of setting boundaries with people, my continuing to support people that were nasty to me, or abusive, or unhealthy, or never changing, you know, and my continuing to love those people. We can love people, but that doesn't mean that we have to have them in our lives, right? And all of that, it all came back to me. It all was about me at the end of the day, and why I was willing to continue to deal with that and tolerate it. And that was a hard thing to look at and be like, wow, like, this is really more about me than I thought it was, you know? So anyway, I wish you the best of luck. I think it's a great question. I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to this, that have family members or friends like this in their lives, you know? I would suggest going to a 12-step program for friends and family members of alcoholics or addicts. Get yourself into some therapy. You know, there's a lot of sliding fee scale, low-cost therapy out there if you can't afford it. I would, you know, recommend setting healthy limits and boundaries with this person in your life, telling them how you feel. You know, and if you're afraid to do that because you're afraid you're going to lose that relationship, it doesn't sound to me like you have a lot to lose at this point anyway. You know, but telling them how you feel, I think, is important, whether that's writing a letter or doing whatever, and then saying, like, and I need to distance myself. Because I think sometimes clarity of mind and, like, being away from a situation for a while and not being, like, around it so close, sometimes, like, when you take a break from that person, you know, and you haven't seen him for 3 or 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever, it's kind of like, okay, I don't feel the way that I felt 2 months ago. Like, I don't have this deep need the way that I thought I did. You know, sometimes we look at it differently. So anyway, just some recommendations for you, and a really great question, and I hope that helped. And I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.